Well, hello and welcome back to the very latest episode of the Love Machine podcast. Now, today we're taking a virtual transatlantic flight to explore the juicy world of dating in two of the most iconic metropolises on the planet, New York City and London town. To guide us through the tangled web of romance in these famous cities, we have a very special guest joining us today, the fantastic, the lovely Alina Fattakhova, founder of the prestigious Bea Monde Matchmaking Agency. Alina has always had a great passion for psychology and found her mission in helping people cultivate long-lasting relationships. With her exceptional education in psychology, business administration, and marketing, she has an extraordinary ability to analyze personalities and masterfully unite hearts. So, are you a die-hard romantic who dreams of being swept off your feet by a dashing New Yorker in the city that never sleeps? Or does the quintessential British charm and wit of a Londoner make your heart flutter like a double-decker bus navigating the busy streets? We're about to dive deep into the dating cultures of these two global powerhouses with the help of our matchmaking maven Alina. From the fast-paced, no-nonsense approach of New Yorkers to the more reserved, proper courtship rituals of the Brits, we'll uncover the secrets, quirks, and unwritten rules that make the dating game in each city uniquely exhilarating and utterly maddening. So whether you're a seasoned player or a hopeless romantic, get ready to laugh, cringe, and maybe shed a tear or two as we explore the highs and lows of London and New York dating. Hold on and get ready for a wild flight. Alina, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for such a great introduction, James.
You're very welcome. That was a long one. I wanted to do you justice today and to describe what we're going to talk about in a nice, fun way. Because it's a very interesting topic. I have clients in both London and New York, and you focus mainly on New York, but you have clients elsewhere. So, can you tell everyone a bit more about you, what you do, and how you got into this?
Sure. So I've been in sales for over 10 years, and you can imagine being in sales, you can meet all kind of people, you interact with all kind of, clientele.
Mhm.
And so for me, it was kind of fascinating, and that's how I got into psychology. And living in New York City in general can be challenging in terms of dating. So all of that combined, I felt like my skills, my interests, and all this fascination with relationship will be greatly applied to match people.
I love that. What a great job to have and to get into. So, Bea Monde Matchmaking, is that beautiful world?
It's called Beautiful Society from
Okay.
French.
Okay.
So I love French. As you know, it's very romantic.
Yeah. C'est
So
bon.
yes.
We could do a whole talk on that, couldn't we? Differences between Paris and New York and London. Just throwing that in the mix. Reminds me of a very famous chat up line I used to have when I was younger in French, but we'll save that for another day, another podcast, because it's not relevant to this right now.
Right.
So let's talk about who do you work with, typical clients? Who would come to you?
So usually it's men that are extremely busy or they just don't have time to, and energy to spend on dating apps, or they just have some kind of challenges to meet that person that they would
Yeah.
want to be with. So they're kind of ready to settle down, they're ready to meet. And sometimes it will be ladies in their late 30s as well that they've done the career path, and now they want to kind of settle down and have the kids and meet that bachelor that they want. So that's my job. My job is to find matches for my clients.
Fantastic. I work with many matchmakers all over the world, and there is a difference between all the different countries, the way that people handle things, the way that they date. So today we're going to focus on the differences between London and New York. So, what would you say was the biggest difference that you see?
Well, that's interesting. I can only say from New York perspective, right? Because
Yeah.
I've only been doing it in New York.
Mhm.
So I would say one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that a lot of times New York attracts extremely ambitious people, right? And people that they're going the career path mostly,
Mhm.
and they kind of get lost in that hustle, and sometimes they might not be dating too much, or they just don't have a good experience with it,
Mhm.
and they kind of disappointed. So that's when they hire me, because they're like, okay, I need to do that. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
the time is going by and I need to start a family. I would love to start a family, or their values change. So I would say that New York can be difficult because nobody seems to have time for dating.
Yeah. It is the city that never sleeps, isn't it, after all? So we're going to have
Correct.
lots of. London's very similar, but I find the differences in London. People tend to live outside London and then go into London to work. So they will go into London to work and maybe date, and then they go out and they've got a place to retreat to almost afterwards. Let's handle this a bit differently then. Let's talk about different aspects of dating, and I will tell you how we do it over here, and you tell me how you do it from your side, and we'll see how different they
Sure.
are, or if they're similar. See if that goes. I don't normally make notes, but I have made a few notes because it's quite an interesting topic. And you will know more about New York dating than I will know, and I will know more about London dating than you will. So to do this, I have a helpful guide just to sort of give us an idea. So let's talk about the first thing, because we ought to keep score for this and work out who wins at the end of this. I'm not really sure who has it harder today. Maybe, but the ways that people meet people. Now, I know you run events as well, don't you, for successful singles?
Yes,
I
I
used to,
do.
yeah. What sort of events do you run?
So I rent beautiful spaces, either art galleries or some very unique spaces in nice neighborhoods.
Mhm.
And I just make sure that all the singles, they kind of balance in terms of age, in terms of that they can actually match. So before the event, I would interview all the singles that get the tickets, and so that I know how to match within that particular group of people. And I do have some couples formed from those events. So it seems to get kind of popular because I feel like there's this trend going on of people being tired of dating apps and going back into the real world, so to say.
Sure, absolutely true. I've run many singles events myself over the years. I wish I could do more, but it's difficult to do it from now logistically. So let's talk first of all about the most common places that people would meet in London and New York. I think apps are pretty universal across the world, but for London, I would say there's quite an emphasis on people socializing with their friends, asking their friends to help them and their family, getting dates from work, doing more sporty events, meeting people as much as they can in the real world. And apps are a part of that as well. What would you say the most common ways someone would meet somebody in New York?
I don't think it's the same way in New York, and there's the challenge, right? A lot of people do meet on the dating apps, which is totally fine if, they have their values align or they just really want to have a relationship. That's great. A lot of times it's also could be bars,
Yeah,
and could be a workplace, because a lot of people spend a lot of time at work in New York.
yeah.
So that could be some of the common places that I've heard.
Mhm.
But I would say it's mostly dating apps for some reason.
Yeah. That's true for many people, but I'm guessing that New Yorkers hate the dating apps as much as the Brits and the Londoners do. Is that true?
I feel like the trend is going that it's backwards right now. People are
Yeah,
so tired of dating apps because all the beautiful or popular people, they get more likes, and the people that, they kind of, it can be a little bit disappointing sometimes, right? Because you might want to, like, the person that's talking to you, he's like, or she's like, I'm really serious about it. But then in reality, that might not be the truth.
yeah,
So
that's very true. What would you say is the most popular dating app?
Interesting. Well, I would say that I've heard a lot of people meeting on Hinge.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something that you have in London.
Mhm. It is. It's the most popular one that we have as well, and it's interesting. It's the only dating app that's making any money, as far as I know. The rest are all struggling quite a lot. But I know there
Really?
used to be one called Coffee Meets Bagel, which was very much popular in New York, but that launched over here, but no one really uses it now. Do you still have that?
We do still have that, and
Mm.
I did hear some people meeting on those
Yeah.
on that app as well as Bumble actually,
Yeah.
because Bumble, it has that concept of the lady messaging first for safety reasons. So it definitely works in New York.
Sure. It used to have that, but I'm sure you read about in the news they're changing that in certain ways and making it so that men can have the first move in different ways. But yeah,
Really?
they are. It was announced yesterday. Although this podcast would go out 6 weeks ahead from when we record this, they are changing the way that they do it. They're giving more flexibility. So women can
Okay.
make the first move, but it's up to men to ask the first questions. They're experimenting and changing it. And I think it ruins
Okay.
the novelty of the app, but we'll see what happens. And that'll be interesting
Yeah, we'll see
going
what
forward.
happens. I don't know if they make money or not, but they're pretty popular, right?
Yeah.
So I guess they can now
Yeah.
do whatever they want in a
They
way.
can. They can. I think more about experimentation. It used to be in dating that I think I said this on a podcast recently that whatever you're doing in New York, we tend to be 5 years behind it over here in the UK in particular. And so if anything is innovative or original now, we'll be doing it soon, but it takes 5 years to do that. But I think we've caught up quite a lot since the pandemic and people are on the same level. But I'm interested to see what comes next. Someone needs to bring out a new concept of a dating app, something that's a bit more original, a bit more fun, because everyone's sick of it and it's time for something brand new. And I think, like you mentioned, events are a really good way to meet people because everyone's single and you can walk into a bar, know who you're attracted to, start conversations maybe you would have swiped away from in real on the dating apps. So, yeah,
Right.
opportunities are all out there. Let's talk about dating styles as the next thing and the way that people date, because I'm sure this is very different. Londoners are slightly more casual when it comes to dating. They will hang out. You go on a date, you're not even sure that it's a date. They will. Are they catching up? Are they just friends? Excuse me. Are they catching up? Are they just friends? Are they? People aren't always clear, and they're so relaxed and chilled out about it, and they won't ever label it as an official date. And they say we're just going to hang out, see what happens, because they don't want to put the pressure or label it. I think New Yorkers are much more serious. What do you think?
I would think usually it's, as I said, it's probably from the app or somewhere else. And sometimes people meet actually running together or clubs, meetups and things like that, which is great. And I hear a lot that first date, it's like the drinks, let's check each other out. Let's see if we can, check each other's energy or things like that. It could be a coffee date. Coffee date is also very popular.
Yeah,
And that's kind of like, yeah.
we'll come on
The
to
first,
that. Yeah. I like to ask all my overseas interview guests about coffee dates because I know it's a really, really big thing where you are. And it's quite a big thing over here. The good thing about what's weird about this is the younger generation now aren't drinking as much alcohol. They are going for coffee dates, going for milkshakes, going for bubble teas, and that's great. But more traditional sort of 30s plus at the moment, I don't personally think that a coffee date is a good idea. Hear me out on this. And the reason for this is I think it's the most low effort, unoriginal, unromantic date you can come up with because people drink coffee all the time. They drink coffee for a business meeting, coffee with a friend, coffee when they're bored, coffee on the way to work. Coffee is just nothing. And it is a snack, is a good taster almost to getting to know someone very quickly. But to me, that's a waste of time. If you're going to go on the date, go for a couple of drinks, make it an effort, make it the highlight in the evening, so you've got something to look forward to in the day. Because to me, it's about looking forward to it and painting a picture, and it's all the different emotions and senses firing off. I'd like to hear your opinion on that, please.
I would totally agree with you. I know that coffee dates are very popular.
Mhm.
I know that, it's better to make an effort for a date.
Yeah.
And the fact that if it's a dinner or let's say if it's some drinks in a nice place, it kind of indicates the effort. So if a guy is constantly taking people on coffee dates, it's almost like he's probably taking like 50 ladies, like in my
Exactly. Yes.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's trying to maximize it. But in my opinion, if you're trying to maximize, you're not focusing on any one of them. So when you're ready, when you're focused, you will want to go for a dinner. You will want to make an effort.
Yeah. It's about an effort, and women appreciate effort and they appreciate
Absolutely.
chivalry. I'm very much old school in what I teach people. And I think it's good. It's how we should be old-fashioned values with a bit of a mischievous edge. I'd probably say to that. That's what we need, isn't it? That is probably me. So that's important. But There are exceptions when coffee dates could be okay. I think if you've got to travel a long way, or you can only do certain times, or you are over a certain age and you don't really feel comfortable going out in the evening, absolutely go for a coffee date. I just think that
Right,
they're conducive because people will go to coffee shops during the day to work, to kill time, or just to catch up with friends. Not the best environment. Let's
right,
talk about openness. That's next on my list here. I would say when it comes to setting intentions, I think Brits are very, very reserved, and Londoners are no exception.
right.
London's very cosmopolitan, of course, but they're very reserved. So there's more like, oh, game playing, I would say. And people don't make their intentions clear. They will say, well, I'm only going to text you if you text me, or I'm going to distance myself. And that's quite a common thing. What's your
Right.
experience in New York with that in terms of, are people quite clear on what they want?
It kind of depends on the people as well because New York is a melting pot.
Yeah.
You know, I myself am from a traditional country. I'm from Russia. So I myself, as you said, like you're more traditional, I myself as well. And but it doesn't mean that everybody is like me, right? So
Yeah.
it's important to see what the person culture is and things like that. For instance, American, they seem to be more open, but they're
Mhm.
also not gonna tell you if they're suspicious of something, they're not gonna tell it to your face.
No.
While like let's say the Eastern European culture where I'm originally from, they will tell it all on their face.
Really?
And
Wow.
they will be,
Okay.
yes, for some reason, like our culture where I'm from, we're not very nice initially because we're like very suspicious, but it all kind of says on our face. And then later on, if we really like that person, we will warm up. So, and we will be like become best friends or like basically show all of our affection. For some reason, it
Yeah.
works reverse.
I didn't know all that. That's good to know. I knew that your name was Russian, but you don't have the
Yes.
Russian accent, so I wasn't sure. Was that? I wanted to ask you whereabouts you're from. Have you lived in America all your life? Or,
No, no, no. I moved here like 8 years ago. So I do have a slight accent, but thank you for the compliment.
I was trying to work it out. I couldn't work out if it's Ukrainian, Russian, somewhere around that sort of area. I would guess it would be.
Right,
And the name,
right,
your name obviously is Russian, or it's not the most traditional names.
right.
So I can tell, but it's good to know. So you're saying that in Russia and countries like that, you're a lot colder and you will call somebody out very quickly. That's like no BS straight away, isn't it? You're not gonna tolerate things. But when someone's earned your
Right.
trust, then you'll give them everything. Yeah.
Yes, it's kind of reverse, right? And
Yeah.
I would say from my experience, British are the same way, but
Mhm.
I don't know, you have to tell me.
The Brits are very polite, but in a sarcastic way. We will go and bitch about someone behind their back rather than to their face. That's very common. I think that's what will happen. We will go and complain about them to other people rather than to their face. I have no filter, as you probably realize. Whatever comes out of my mouth is whatever's going to happen. I say I have no filter. I'm still guarded. I won't offend people on purpose. And I'm very
Mhm.
polite. I'm very lovely. If somebody upsets me or somebody crosses me or someone says something horrible to me, I'm back like that. I'm back with something really cleverly witty and rude potentially. Passive aggressive is probably the phrase I'm looking for to do that. But generally, no one wants to upset anybody, and we're all a bit nervous about that. And in a dating situation, I couldn't imagine a situation when a man would want to be rude to a woman on a first date because it's the goal to get to know each other. But sometimes I have heard that a man has turned up on a date and he is maybe 5 inches shorter than he's claimed to be, or he's very rude, or doesn't smile, or doesn't offer to buy a drink. In that situation, there's a lot of women that won't stand for that. And they will get up and they will walk out. Thanks very much, but I'm going away. But there are just as many women who will still sit down there and spend 2 hours tolerating that person out of politeness. Could you imagine New Yorkers doing that?
Well, you mean like lying on their dating
No,
apps
no, but
and
accepting
or
weird behavior.
tolerating?
Accepting,
Unfortunately, women do tolerate that. Yes, I've noticed, but I think it's all about like personal boundaries, right? And
yeah,
the good girl syndrome type of thing, where you still
right?
tolerate something that you feel like it's definitely not for you.
Yeah,
And I would not encourage that because, time is expensive. If you really feel like that person either misled you, or they're kind of rude, or they're treating the waiting staff very badly. That's a huge red flag, by the way.
Yeah.
So I personally would not stay on that date. And I used to, because I used to be that good girl, who would stay and not say anything, and like, oh, I don't want to be rude or this or that. But now with time and experience, I'm definitely not doing that. So I would just politely say, oh, something happened, I have to run, but without trying to offend that person.
Has that actually happened to you recently?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So I've been through this trajectory of dating guys that were kind of narcissistic, because they were like high powered, and a lot of times it's kind of correlated, not all the time, but a lot of times it's correlated. So through my experience, I've learned that it doesn't pay off to be the good girl, and you have to break off those patterns. You have to set your own boundaries and see that actually the super bad guys are not attractive anymore. So you kind of have to change that pattern of being attracted to such guys. And yes, and that's the women that come to me, I work with them on, through my experience, right? I work with them to break those patterns and actually be attracted to the guy who is genuinely nice and good and reliable.
The interesting thing is, a man can be all those things. A man can be interesting, funny, reliable, nice, sweet, funny, intelligent, and an alpha male, and successful, and powerful, all at the same time.
Absolutely. I meet them every day, by the way. I meet them
Yeah,
every day. And I'm not saying,
that's me.
uh,
That's it. Same thing.
absolutely.
That's it.
No, I'm
True.
not saying all of the successful guys are in that category, not at all. I meet, but for some
Yeah.
reason, you would probably agree with me that some of them are not able to market themselves. So they might be a little bit on the shyer side with the
Yeah.
ladies. They could be a shark in the business, by the way, but
Yeah.
they might be very like reserved, or kind of not knowing what to do. And that's when they need that help, to kind of be confident enough to
Correct.
approach the ladies.
Yeah.
Look at all of these tech, founders. They're
Mm.
kind of like, they're extremely successful. Nice. Some of them are extremely good guys, but they're just like, they're spending most of their time with a computer, and, and they might not have a lot of experience dealing with ladies. So
No.
they kind of get lost in that department. And that's where we come in, right? As to help them.
Very much so. I think that's a very fair point. There are men definitely like that who are lovely, decent guys and successful, incredibly rich billionaires out there who just don't know what to do and they're a bit shy.
Yeah.
And I was there at one point many, many years ago. I used to be shy, believe it or not. I used to be quite introverted, but deep down, I was an extrovert trying to burst out of that. And you get different layers of this. And I became an actor, and this all happened years ago. So I see all the different levels of this, and it's an
But you
interesting.
had to come out of your shell, right? So you did
Yeah,
some.
yeah. I had to. By acting, I came out of my shell. Exactly what it is. I was quite shy. I could be in the right situation. I could be really confident. Others, I could be shy. And that's true of most people, even now. I can be in situations where I can be a bit shy or not really sure of myself. Most of the time, I will be, and everyone thinks I'm really overly confident. And that's true. But I've learned that over the years of my life. But there are still situations where I will feel uncomfortable or not really sure. But I've learned to fight through that and know it doesn't really matter and how to handle that. And that comes with life experience. And that's why we teach people this, how to be confident. And inner confidence is a very difficult thing. But I think most people do have it. We have to allow ourselves the privilege of being who we truly are and being
Yeah,
authentic selves.
authentic.
Authentic selves. And that's an important
Yeah.
thing. We'll put on acts so many times in dating and in life to try and impress other people. Just try and impress yourself. That's the best way to live your life. And that's what I do. I'm always trying to impress myself. Hence that quiz I told you about before. I won the quiz. I'm still impressed with that. It wasn't that
That's
complicated, but it
amazing.
was. It was. I mentioned this in a previous podcast, but I won a quiz recently. I got a lovely medal that they give away to everybody. But I got a lovely medal that I've been after for ages.
Look, it's still an accomplishment, so you should be
It
proud
is.
of it.
I'm very proud of it. I've wanted one for
That's
years,
amazing.
and I think the fact I entered the quiz in the first place is enough to get forward. Let's get back on track because I'm nice little tangents. I love going on them, and we could talk about things for hours. Let's talk about what's next on my list here. Okay, what about in terms of time, you mentioned that many New Yorkers are very pressed for time and they're quite busy. I would say Londoners can be quite pressed for time, but we're able to make more time and people are quite chilled out about the way that they date. Would you say that that can be a problem for people if they are too rushed?
I would say so. For instance, I notice it even when people buy tickets to my events and then last minute they cancel or they double booked, right? So there's so much going on that sometimes people have that fear of missing out, right? And if their dating is not their priority, so they might be, canceling on dates or they might be working over the weekend. I know people like that. There's this culture going on that you kind of tie your worth to your career. And that's what New York attracts, a lot. Not everybody, but a lot of people are like that. So I would say it's kind of interesting that some people, when they slow down a little bit and they decide that they want to focus on their relationship, they put more time into dating. So, but in general, I would say that New York is this hustling and bustling type of culture that sometimes even meeting friends can be challenged. Like I haven't seen some of my friends for months now. So, yeah.
I'm the same, unfortunately. I live outside London now. I go in occasionally. We had this conversation on our podcast, didn't we? I only go in certain times, so I've got enough people to make it worth seeing. Otherwise, it's a long travel trek in and out again. But I think Londoners who work and live in London, they were more likely to go out with their friends after work and catch up with them, and it's easy to do. But there is another problem that comes with this with London, I would say, in comparison with New York. London is very spread out. There is great transport on the tubes and buses, but you can get to one end of London, it takes you hours and hours and hours. It's very, very spread out. London's Greater London. I think New York's a lot easier to meet people if you're going to arrange a date. Is that true?
That's true. That's definitely true. I would say that New York seems to be like super big. Yes, it can be a little bit spread out because they're boroughs.
Yeah.
But if you're in Manhattan or if somebody else lives in that borough, you can kind of make that meeting in the middle. So that kind of works. And you can take the subway, which is the fastest, or an Uber, and it might work. Yes, I would say London is probably more spread out.
It is. And people tend to not live in London. They will work outside London.
Okay.
They've got to commute back and forth to do that. And the transport is generally quite good, other than all the tube and train strikes we have all the time at the moment, and bus strikes. But put that aside, I think it's a lot easier to meet someone after work and then to go off and get a train later, which is great. Do you have 24/7 transport on the metros and things?
We do. Except for the 24/7, like at night, it's not, as often, but still, it's kind of makes it mobile.
Yeah.
And you can take that. Yeah. So that's in a way is a good thing about dating in New York is that you cannot, it doesn't get cut off the transportation.
No, ours does on certain lines. Some of the tubes are 24/7 now, but only at weekends. And the trains tend to finish around just after midnight, 12:30, 1 o'clock at weekends. So if I'm going to London, I'm hosting an event, for example, I have to make sure that I leave the event early to go off and to get that train to go back home again. And then I have to drive from there. There's no buses or trains or taxis from that station. Very strange setup, and then go back. So it can be complicated. But if you in London itself, it's easy. And there are 24/7 night buses as well that go on. But I would not wish that on anybody getting on one of those night buses. Full of all the drunk people going home on a very
Really?
slow crawl. I've done it a few times in my life and I absolutely don't enjoy that. But you know what? If you're in a good mood, do what you want to do overall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I don't suggest anybody to meet late for a date either,
No.
right? It has to be, around after your work, which is probably around 6, 7 for a couple of hours, and then get home so that it's safe, and
Absolutely.
text your friends or text your mom before, especially for ladies, I'm talking, right? Before meeting the
Yeah.
guy or meet in the crowded place somewhere where you just kind of safe. You never know.
You don't know. Always be safe. And that's very, very important to remember that. Don't just go anonymously and turn up for somewhere because you never know who they are.
Right.
And meet in a public place, of course. That applies anywhere you're going to go. Meet somewhere
Yeah.
that's full of people. Don't meet in the middle of an alleyway or on a
Yeah.
dark street under a street light. No, not a good plan.
Please
The
be aware of those. Yes.
people aren't always aware because people are often new to dating, aren't they? And they're not sure what to do. They've been in a relationship all their life and they're very trusting. And it's good to trust people, but you never know. Your safety comes first, which
Yes.
leads on to the next, well, probably the last question of this little set here: intimacy. I
Mhm.
believe that Londoners can really take their time before they do want to get intimate and involved with somebody. I think things can be a bit more casual when it comes to New Yorkers, and they want to sort of test the chemistry out much faster. What would you say to that?
I would say so. I would say that people are a little bit impatient in New York, and you are kind of having that rule in mind that by third, fourth date, you are supposed to be intimate. But honestly, as a person who is more traditional, and not only that, I study psychology and like how the, hormones work and everything. So I would suggest getting to know each other first, right? And like getting to be a little friends before and just not jump into into bed quickly. That's my
Yeah,
suggestion I give.
I would agree with that definitely. Take your time. It will nurture the seed and it will grow to a big tree. That's what you need to do. Don't just chop it off too early because it's what's the point of that? You'll enjoy it much more when there's an emotional connection as well. And you can have a
Right.
good laugh about it. And intimacy is all about having a good laugh as well, believe it or not. It
Right.
is
I
enjoying it.
feel like you need to find out what the person's character is because on the
Yeah.
first couple of dates, there's going to be a representative of that person. Is not sometimes going to be that person, right? So you have to kind of look at the reality and see what are the, is he caring? Oh, is the guy being reliable? Is he, telling you that he's going to call you and he calls you, like things like that. This is very important. And it's
Mhm.
not about how the guy exactly looks because looks can change, right? So to me, like character, I always say character is more important than, how tall the guy is or, things like that.
I
Would you
definitely
agree?
agree. Oh, absolutely. Because characters got to stay with you, and looks will fade over time, or they'll change and they'll adapt. You can't just go for somebody thinking they can look the same all their life or act the same. But character is someone that's emotionally invested in you and someone that wants to improve themselves. And character should
Yeah,
be able to be improved rather than reduced, and that comes with the experience. I would say to that. So
right.
absolutely. Thank you very much for talking to me about that. I'm going to ask you the last question now, well, the penultimate
Sure.
question. And this is about you're a very successful, hardworking businesswoman. Do you have any daily habits and things that you try and do each day?
Sure, absolutely. I try to, when I wake up, to be kind of thankful and grateful for the day, to approach it with a gratitude that I'm awake, I'm healthy, and etc. Also do sports, that gives me happiness, and helping clients for me is actually also bringing me happiness when,
Yeah.
I talk to them. I'm a people's person. So I love that communication. I love
Mhm.
helping and figuring things out.
Yeah.
And just, anything that's I love my family. I love so things like that. Like world is so beautiful. You just have to kind of focus on seeing the good things in it more than the bad things. And you can actually train your brain to do that more so. So I hope that answered your question.
It does, but it opens up more questions because
Yeah,
I think
sure,
it's
please.
true. Well, it's true of dating as well. I always teach my clients to look for the reason something might work rather than the ways that it won't work. It's very important. People tend to look and self-sabotage and rule people out too quickly.
Right.
But you said you can train your brain to do that.
Yes.
How would you train you're the psychologist. How would you train your brain to do that?
Well, I'm not exactly the psychologist, but I would say from a coaching experience, because I did the coaching and we studied the brain.
Yeah.
And it's just when you study the brain, you know that the brain always has more negative thoughts than the
Mhm.
positive. So sometimes you just have to concentrate, it starts with certain practices, right? Like, for instance, if you feel like you're sabotaging your relationship, you have to kind of look what that person does for you, you know, because you're not paying to those details that maybe he or she's putting good effort and you guys are trying to do things together. And part of the thing is to maybe realize what your love language is, how do you receive love, and communicate that to your partner, and that partner should communicate back, so that you guys meet each other's love languages and do it more often and be grateful for what they do. And, you know, so that maybe it's basically a lot of it is communication, right? So we just have to be a little bit vulnerable and be able to talk to our partner in that way from the place of vulnerability.
I completely agree with all you just said there. I think vulnerability is so important. I mentioned this to all my clients. I did it twice today already. People don't find it easy to be vulnerable because we've all got a bit of a guard up around us, protecting us from getting hurt, getting rejected, being told off. So let the guard down gently. And vulnerability is an important part of it because it's being childlike, it's being fun, being free. And by being vulnerable, it's not a weakness, it's a strength. Because
it's definitely a strength.
It really is. We can talk about that another time, I think. So if somebody wants to find more about you and find out more about you or your agency, how do they do that?
Sure, you can follow me on Instagram. That's my most active platform, I would say. It's MS NYC, which is New York City, MS, which is Miss NYC Ginger. Because of my hair color, it's a little gingerish. And, or you can just put Alina Ginger. That's how I go by, so that my last name, not everybody has to pronounce my last name.
I have to pronounce it.
You were great. Hey, you were great. Kudos to that. Or you can go and Google Bea Monde Matchmaking New York City, and you'll just find my website. So thank you so much, James, for this wonderful podcast.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed talking to you, as I always do. And hopefully I get to speak to you in real life at some point soon. That would be lovely.
Absolutely. Hopefully soon.
That'd be amazing. Thank you so much and have a great rest of the day. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to give you a free copy of my latest book, which you can download right now from my website, jamespreece.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could share the love by taking a few seconds to write a positive review on the iTunes store right now. See you next time.